This is the Wellness Puzzle Podcast with Andrew Jobling, author, speaker, educator, entrepreneur, and AFL player. Join Andrew as he continues his lifelong journey as a student of human behaviour. This podcast will help you live your passion, explore your potential, step into your power, and embrace your possibilities.
Welcome to the Wellness Puzzle Podcast. My name's Andrew Jobling, and this episode I get to speak to the fabulous Tory Trewhitt, who is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for over 20 years. Background in health and fitness and corporate health. He's, by his own admission, a serial entrepreneur and just released his very first book called Blokes Inc, and it's an awesome book. Trust me, there's a story behind this. His entrepreneurial journey led him from Melbourne up to Byron Bay to get into the hospitality industry. I'm not going to say any more. You need to listen to this podcast to hear about his journey, what he endured, what he overcame, and now what he's learned and what he's using to help other people, and that he's put in his book. This is an incredible conversation with a real good mate of mine, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy my chat with Tory Trewhitt. I'm with the great man. G'day, TT. How are you?
Jobbers, good to be here.
Mate, good to have you.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. I mean, you and I have been together for probably 20 years on and off.
Well, hang on, mate. Let's just clear this up. When you say we've been together, just for the audience's sake, Tory is happily married with kids, and well, I'm happily single with no kids, but it's not a romantic together. No. It's been, mate. You know, I remember the first time we met. You were PTing at a gym in St Kilda, weren't you? The Chapel Fitness, I think it was.
Correct.
Mate, that's got to be close to 20 years.
Yeah, and I think it was even,
maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more, because I think you'd come out of Harper's, you'd come out of the PT show.
Yeah.
And that's why I was sort of using you as a bit of a mentor, because ideally that's what I wanted to do. But it took me a little bit longer.
You've had a journey since then. You've had a journey since then, haven't you?
Well, yeah.
We'll talk about this journey that Tory has been on. My gosh, mate, because I know one of the things I've always loved about you, mate, is just you've just got a vision. You have a crack. You know, you've got the grit to have a go at stuff, and some stuff doesn't work, does it?
Mate, in all honesty, and me and my wife will testify to this, and it does drive her a little bit crazy because I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. But yeah, I've tried so many businesses, you know, and so many different things to get out of probably the health space. But it's quite ironic because I went through this shit show, which we'll talk about later on, and it's actually driven me back into the space.
It. Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? Because it's probably driven you back to where you probably want to be and need to be. You just didn't realise it at the time.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always say, mate, there's nothing bad in life. It's all just content for your book. And so this is exciting, mate. You've just published your first book.
Yeah, unbelievable.
How cool is that, mate? Because that's been a journey. I mean, we started chatting together about a book. How long ago was that? That would have been
16 years.
16. You know exactly right. You know how many months, days, and hours?
Yeah. I had you on and off the hook, and you were my coach for the book. And I was fortunate enough to launch it in Byron Bay, where I live now, on the 10th of April. And they asked me about how did you get it done? And I said a key component was having a coach, you know, and that was you.
Yeah. Oh, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. And I know, and because it's been interesting, it's been that journey, hasn't it, where we sat down and we talked about a book and you got started. But clearly 16 years ago, you weren't ready to write the book. You didn't have the content that you've got now to write. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people, for whatever reason, they don't follow through on something in that moment. And there's a reason for that. And I just think you weren't ready at that point to write your book because you've got so much more wisdom and experience and perspective now that you can help more people. And that's why I think your book's going to do incredibly well.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jobbers. And when I did start it, I had my own business in Melbourne, based at Melbourne Sports and Aquatic Centre, and I was single. I had no kids. And the book for me was a bit more ego-orientated. Trying to build a brand and do all that sort of stuff. And then I went away from it. Got out of the industry, and then had a terrible 4 years. But as you say, you never fail. It's all a learn. It's all a lesson, and that's how you come out the other side. That's the true personal and professional development.
Absolutely, and mate, it might still feel like it was terrible, but you in the next few years you'll look back and go, "Gosh, I'm grateful for that."
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of the book launch in Byron, because we came up here 8 years ago, and part of the launch was a bit of closure, getting it out there, getting it off my chest, admitting that, yes, I failed. And yes, I was in a dark place. And yes, disowned my families and friends and went against everything that I'd preached for,
Yeah,
the previous decade
yeah.
in the corporate health space. And I completely went against it. But when I was in the darkest place, the only thing I knew that was going to work was self-medication, and that's health and fitness. And hence what brought me back to you, and you kept me accountable every fortnight.
Well, mate, thankfully that was your self-medication because
Yeah,
other people
100%.
go down a very different
Yeah.
self-medication path, whether
Yeah.
it be alcohol or drugs or whatever. And mate, thankfully you had
Mm.
enough smarts, and obviously you were married with kids going through that as well. So you had that, and I know your wife is a really important part of your life and a guide and a help for you and a support for you. But wow, it would have been real easy to spiral, wouldn't it? But you didn't, mate. You picked yourself up, and here you are.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit now. Let's talk a little bit about the book. We'll touch on it now, and then we'll dive into it a little bit more as we get through this podcast. But the book is called Blokes Inc. And tell us a bit about it.
Yeah.
What's the concept? Why have you written it? What's really the goal with your book?
Yeah, sure. As we sort of touched on earlier, I was in the health space. I've been self-employed since, 2001, and started a personal training company that grew into a corporate health company. And every day I was working with corporate execs, and every day I was seeing the same thing. They were all reactive, not proactive. They
Yep.
were all one-dimensional rather than multi-dimensional.
Yep.
They all thought they were doing the right thing by, dedicating their life to their wealth and building, what they thought was the right thing. And at the same time, they lost their relationship, they lost their health, they lost, their social connectivity.
Yes.
And I actually did the same thing after moving out of health and into hospitality, which was something very foreign to me. I threw myself into the deep end. Instead of opening one restaurant, I opened two at the same time. Had a roller coaster, got ripped off from day one by the shop fitter. Then we had COVID, and Byron Bay is a touristy town, so we lost all tourism. And I just had to, as you say, dig myself out of the hole. And the only one thing I was completely confident and competent in is health,
Yeah.
and I know that if I was to dedicate time to that rather than sitting in the shop being lonely, eating, potato cakes and drinking the beer out of the fridge, that wasn't going to get me out of the hole and the mindset I was in. So it was going back to practicing what I preach, and Blokes Inc. Is exactly that. And the reason I've called it that is to try and emphasize and encourage men to run their body like a business.
I love it, mate. And because blokes are, I mean, we are self-destructive. There's no doubt about it. Our ego takes a hold at times and takes our body down a path that it probably can't. We think we can handle it, but we can't. And what I love, mate, is because I guess before your Byron experience, you've always been fit and healthy. I know you've run marathons, you've done Ironman triathlons, you've done all this kind of stuff. So you've never really been out of shape. You've always been in shape. You've
Yeah.
always been in control of your health. And so you're talking from a position, I guess, like I do in health and well-being, because I've never lost my health either. I mean, I've been through some pretty dark times for sure. But it's one thing to talk from a place of, well, I'm fit, I'm healthy, I live the lifestyle to people. But it's another thing to then go through it
Mm.
and really be challenged and then have to bring yourself back out the other side to give you that incredible perspective. So now you've got the perspective from both sides, right? You've got the perspective from the professional that's an athlete, but you've also got the perspective from someone who is in a very deep, dark hole and could have quite easily have spiraled into the abyss.
Yeah. And not only did I lose my health, but we lost all of our money, So we went from owning, Fee had a house, I had a house in Melbourne. Then we got married, so we bought a nice house. We lived in Hampton. Kids went to a nice school. Then we moved up here, sold the houses, put all of our capital into two restaurants, thinking that we'd be able to scale and all that sort of stuff. And
Yep.
instead of working 60 hours a week, which was my typical week in Melbourne, I'd do 20 hours a week and spend time with the kids at the beach and surf. And it was completely the opposite.
So that's what you thought was going to happen? You thought it would
100%.
be 20 hours a
100%.
week. And
Yeah. I was sold a dream by this franchise, and I knew the guy pretty well. And everyone's
yeah,
always got their own view on franchises, but
yep.
I knew him. I'd
You
worked with
trusted
him
him.
100%.
Yep.
And then when things got tough, it's your issue. It's not our issue.
Oh, mate, that's horrible.
And that was time and time again. And people say you don't need money to be happy, but you need to be able to pay your bills. And there was a stage there where it was, how am I going to pay the bills?
Mate, I know. When you don't have money or
Yeah,
you're struggling financially, it's all you think about. How am I
100%.
going to pay that bill? Can I afford that? Is there
Yeah,
going to be money on the credit card when I try and get petrol or go to the
yeah,
supermarket? It's an ongoing stress that has a incredible
yeah.
impact on your health and well-being. So, I mean, financial health is critical. And you're right, you
100%.
don't need money to be happy, but trust me, without it, you will, it
Yeah.
makes life a lot easier to be happy when you've got enough of it, for
And the
sure.
relationship pressure that puts on, I'd come
Yeah.
home every night and Fee's going, we've got to shut the business down, we've got to shut it down. I thought, we can't shut it down. We've got too much debt in the bank, you know?
Yeah.
We don't want to go bankrupt. We've just got to hang in there, hang in there. And people say, oh, a month, 6 months, 12 months. It was 4 years.
Wow.
Like 4 years, I cut 3 fingers off. We lost all our money, nearly got divorced. The kids heard, we never used to fight, but then we went through this, stage where, we were questioning each other every day,
Yeah.
and it was a 7-day-a-week business. It was, in a touristy town. So you had staffing issues. They didn't care that. And a lot of the time they didn't know how
Transient.
bad things were. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my new friends would come in thinking they were doing the right thing and saying hello and, supporting and all that sort of stuff. And I'm the face of the business, so I've got to be happy. They go, oh, Tory's all right, he's smiling. And as soon as they go to the restaurant, I just, sit down on my knees and take a deep breath and think, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah. Well, mate, I'm sorry you went through that.
But as you
I
say,
am.
it has framed the book, and I'm more authentic. I've lived it. I've got out of health. I drank beers when I shouldn't be drinking beers. I was eating potato cakes. I was having fried food. I was consuming everything the restaurant offered. And thankfully we got out of it. And I've transitioned, pretty much back into the health space full time.
But you're a new person, mate. I can tell, now that I talk to you, you're just renewed. I can see renewed. I can see fresh vision, fresh perspective, which is awesome. So TT, let's have a quick break, mate. Come back, and I just want to dive a little bit deeper into why, for goodness sake, did you go into hospitality? I think that's the question on everyone's lips. What were you thinking? Let's have a break, and we'll come back and get that question answered.
Great question.
TT, hospitality is an awesome business when you're on the other side of the fence. When you walk into a restaurant, you go up to the counter, you order food, you sit down, they bring it to you, eat and drink and leave. That's where hospitality is enjoyable.
Yes.
As you know, mate, I owned a cafe, so we were talking in the break. We've actually had a pretty similar journey. We've both got a health and fitness background, both personal trainers. We've both delved into hospitality that went pear-shaped. And as a bit of a catalyst of that, we've both become authors. And it's just, well, you know what? We've got to do it, don't we?
Yeah.
And that was for me. That question I asked you before the break is, what were you thinking? Well, trust me, mate, I've asked myself that question many, many, many times, not just buying a cafe with no hospitality experience and working 80 hours a week as a personal trainer at the time. I've asked myself that question in many things, but
yeah.
we have a vision, right? Like you had a vision from going from working 60 hours a week in Melbourne in the cold during winter to working 20 hours a week in a beautiful place in Byron Bay and spending time with your kids and your family, having this balance and lifestyle. I had a similar vision, that I'd be rich and free and have time and impact lives and all this kind of stuff. And it just went horribly pear-shaped. So, mate, okay, so let's go back to the question. What were you thinking when you made that decision to buy not just one but two, move from Melbourne to Byron Bay and totally turn your life upside down?
It's funny, and it's it wasn't a decision that we made overnight, but Fee and I, once we got married, would regularly holiday in Byron. So collectively we'd probably been going there for 11 years and thought, how good's this?
Yep.
Amazing lifestyle, this, that, and the other. And every time we went there, it was holiday season, so it was chockers.
Yep.
There was a product in Melbourne, and I was training the founder. There was 13 shops in Melbourne.
A very successful product in Melbourne too.
Amazing. And we sort of picked it apart, and it sort of product-wise, and still to this day, even my experience with the franchise is very sour, and I can't speak very fondly of it. The product is amazing.
Yes.
And so I thought, yeah, this is great idea. And at that stage, I had tried, an active wear company, a yoga studio, a mobile juice bar. I tried multiple businesses.
Yep.
And the only thing that was working was True Health, which is my corporate health and training company.
Yep.
But I wanted to get out of that. I was sort of sick of counting reps and sets and talking, carbs, proteins, macros. And I was also traveling a bit, doing some corporate speaking, which I love, but it was time away from the kids, and they were 4, 7, and 8 at the time. Anyway, an opportunity came up, and the guy that owned this franchise said, we want to open a couple of stores up the east coast of Australia. And I put my hand up straight away and said, this is it. He's driving around in a Ferrari. He's got all the toys. He's got the nice house, this, that, and the other. And one thing that Dad said to me when I was in year 12, he goes, Tory, I don't care what you do, but whatever you do, be self-employed.
Yep.
So, and that stayed with me. And I've always been self-employed. And Fee, my wife, says I'm unemployable because I've been my own boss. I can't be told what to do.
Same, mate. Same.
And I agree with it. Like it's hard. The rewards are great, but at the same time, you don't have the super balance you think you should have. You don't have, holidays.
And the buck stops with you. There's no escape. There's no one else to blame.
Yeah. So I guess to answer your question, why hospo? One, because I thought the business was a good business.
Yep.
2, it was a franchise model. So it comes with all the expertise, the product,
systems,
the support, systems. And 3, the location was going to be our new home. And the second shop was just up 45 minutes up the road.
So it sounds like a wise decision, a smart decision, a logical, sensible decision.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering that question, mate.
And in all honesty, and who knows, COVID's COVID, but because it was Byron Bay, a good week we were doing 65 grand a week.
Wow.
But a bad week is 12 grand a week.
Yep.
But your rent's the same, your electricity's the same, But so it's the roller coaster of that. And even I look at Byron now, and having been out of it for 2 years, there's a lot of businesses that just can't make it work.
They haven't recovered. Yeah. Mm.
So it was health to hospo, back to health, and I'm grateful. Or as nasty as the experience has been, but writing the book and sort of a bit of closure through the experiences and being open and honest, and I say it in the book in one of the chapters, social connectivity. Like I walked away from my friends, I walked away from my family. They'd ring, but I felt like I couldn't add value. So I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't listen to voicemails. I didn't do any of that sort of stuff. And we know that social isolation kills.
Absolutely.
So for me, writing the book and admitting, that this is a problem, and having also worked with other clients, and to your credit, one of the good things of the book is the structure. Like there's a real story, and whether it be a client story or my story, we talk about it, we workshop it, and then we go through how did you get out of that. And I talk a lot to my current execs that I work with, all about bio-individuality. Like what's right for Andrew is not going to be right for Tory. It's not going to be right for Fee. You've got to create your own context, your goals, your visions, your program. There's a few non-negotiables, but you can't use the cookie cutter approach and get something off Instagram or Facebook or do what your mates are doing for it to be sustainable and successful.
And that's anything in life, isn't it? It's got to 100%. Be right for you. So, mate, I mean, I don't want you to go into the details of the business, and because I know it was not a happy or
chapter 1.
Read chapter 1, everyone. Read chapter 1. You'll get into all the details of how Tory lost his fingers, and I've read a lot of it because I've helped him with it. So it's full on. But, mate, I guess the key question here that I'm really keen to ask you is, I mean, you're in a dark place, mate. Like you've lost all your money. You've lost 3 of your fingers. Your marriage was obviously strain. What's the word I'm looking for? Was strained.
At
Um,
best. Yeah.
you've disconnected socially from your friends and family. Well, mate, it would have been easy to go to the end of a pier and jump off,
Mm.
or walk in front of ongoing traffic. In that moment, what was the thinking that got you to go, okay, no, Tori, I've got to get up and I've got to get my health back into check. I've got to do what I know to do. Tell us about that moment, because I think there's a lot of people listening to this, hopefully not as deep, dark place as you were then, but
Mm.
maybe struggling or maybe feeling stuck and they're just not sure what to do. Tell us how you navigated that and got yourself into this much more positive state of mind.
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's probably a number of things that forced me to show up, or, as my subtitle is, play a bigger game. And one of the things I always revert back to is self-pride. And I didn't want to be remembered, and especially my kids, they were young, and then when we were getting out of it, they were sort of, Indy was, a teenager, so she'd seen and probably heard and can articulate how bad it was for her.
Yeah.
And it was trying to be a good role model. And I
Yeah.
thought, yes, the easy thing would be to, do something that's, um, dramatic,
Destructive.
destructive, and but that's not the role model. It's not the ethics. It's not the self-worth, or it's not the person that I want to be remembered by.
So you're really thinking about your ripple effect or the impact of your choices are going to have on your kids and on your
100%.
family. Yeah.
And like yourself, like I grew up as not a great academic, but a high achiever through sport, and I wasn't fortunate and wasn't good enough to play AFL like you, but that was a goal, and then when I didn't do that, I got into marathon running. And then when that got too easy, I got into ultra marathon running and went from 50Ks to 100Ks. So I was always striving
Striving. Yep.
to show people that you can do things. A lot of people have that fixed mentality and say, don't do that. And I talk about that syndrome, like that, people are stuck in that sort of self-belief, or that box that, this is how they should operate all the time.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to one, fail, and two, not get off the canvas. And for me, I did struggle. I did, as I say, pull away from my friends, and I didn't exercise, and I ate and I drank the bar dry a few nights. But I thought, I don't want to be remembered, and this isn't going to be my legacy.
No.
And I
I
think
love that.
that was the key thing. How can I continue to be a good role model for my kids going forward?
Mate, I love that. I love that. That's powerful because I think people are going to relate to that because there are a lot of people sitting listening to this going, I am struggling and, it's so easy to give up and this is hard. But when you stop and think about who are you role modeling to,
Mm,
what legacy are we leaving? Because we'll all leave a legacy. And I think a lot
yeah,
of people just don't even consciously think about the fact that every choice they make, every word they speak, every action they take is leaving a legacy, is
yeah,
creating a ripple effect, is their role modeling to someone. Someone's watching. There's always someone. And you said you sort of isolating yourself, but still people were watching you. Your kids were watching you. You said your teenage daughter
yeah.
could tell you pretty much what was going on. Well, certainly for her, she knew what was going on. She was watching her dad. She's
Mm,
watching how does dad handle this because this is going to be the blueprint for me when I come across some
100%.
struggles in my life. So, mate, I love that. That's
Mm.
awesome. What a wonderful thing.
And I think it sort of comes down to work ethic. And I think that's one thing, doesn't matter how hard you're doing it. One of my mantras is no one will outwork me. Like I'll just keep getting up, keep getting up, keep getting up, keep getting up, keep getting up.
Where did that come from?
I reckon it's probably my dad, actually.
Yep.
His dad passed away when he was 14, and he went to work straight away and looked after his mum and looked after his sister. And he's always had this incredible work ethic, had an accountancy firm. He was a chartered accountant, and had a big company.
Yep.
And it was interesting, actually. Like, I had not a privilege, but a comfortable lifestyle down on the Mornington Peninsula. I went to a private boys' school, but at a similar age to what I was when I lost everything,
Yep.
my mum and dad went through the same thing. They had invested in some real estate up in Palm Beach, with a couple of mates. There's a pilot strike, and then everything just, went pear-shaped. And we went from a beautiful house on an acre with two German cars to dad saying, well, we're going to sell a house. We're going to rent. He went from a, V12 sports Mercedes to a Toyota Corolla,
Ain't nothing wrong with a Toyota Corolla, mate.
No, but
Gets you from A to B.
and at that stage, I was in year 12, so I was at that, all
Yeah.
about me, all about me, all about me.
Yeah.
And mum and dad kept a lot of that, away from us, how
Yeah.
bad things were. Um, but he just kept showing up, kept showing up,
Yeah. So
kept
you
showing
were
up.
watching him,
Yeah.
and that's
Um,
powerful, isn't it?
and I think he was in Victoria, I was in Byron Bay, but he knew that, yes, I'm having a bad time. And he still says that. He goes, mate, you got plenty of time left, to make money. He goes,
Yeah.
you just got to keep
True.
hanging in there.
Love that.
And I think you're right. It's time on task. And I talk about it in the book. It's like anything. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it,
Yeah.
So, I was at the stage, I wasn't measuring or managing anything well.
Yeah.
So I had to get some structure. And part of the structure was getting out of bed, getting some fresh air, journaling, eating, drinking water, doing the simple
Yeah.
things first,
Got to start with it, mate. That's perfect. That's exactly where we
Yeah.
need to start. Because I think people go, okay, well, if I'm going to change my life, I've got to change everything today.
100% correct.
And we fail miserably when we try that. So just one or two little things, just
Yeah.
create that
Yeah.
structure. Structure is
Yeah.
important.
And that's what I talk about in the book. Just do one change today that's going to make a difference tomorrow.
Yep.
So what is it? Is it hydration? Is it sleep habits? Is it sleep hygiene? Is it, food? Is
Yep.
it increasing your protein? What is it? And you wouldn't let me have it as the title of the book, The Perfect Threesome, but it is as simple
I think you might have attracted the wrong audience.
it is. It's sleeping, eating, and exercising. It really is. If you can get your sleep right, your nutrition
Yeah.
right, and you move a little bit more, I think it's a key component. And I've chosen to focus, on men's health, because
Yep.
that's a passion of mine, and men tend to be reactive rather than proactive.
They do.
But women, there's no difference. Same thing. The perfect threesome applies. Women have to lift weights. I don't care what you
Absolutely.
say.
And they have to eat protein.
And they have to eat protein. And, sleep's a key component. And I know they get belted with sleep, especially if they become a parent and then they get,
Yeah.
perimenopausal and menopausal. So they go through the whole,
There's a lot of challenges. Absolutely.
Yeah,
But you're right. It
sleep-wise.
still applies, mate. It's absolutely
But
applies. So TT, before we have another break, the question is just to wrap up the hospitality business. So
yeah.
you got to a point where you obviously said you're probably falling deeper and deeper into debt. What was that defining moment? You said, that's it, I've got to get out of this. And how did you do that? Did you sell? Did you just walk away? What happened?
Yeah. Fee would have shut the business 18 months prior. And
That's
she said,
why we should listen to women more.
yeah. But in saying that, we're in such a deep hole, and we had equipment finance, loans with the bank. We owed the bank 90 grand. We're on the hook with the landlord, and also suppliers. So I knew that we had to get out. And if you looked externally at the business, you think, oh, but it's going well. Like, there's always people in the restaurant. The food, the product's good. People thought we were doing well. But little did they know that, a lot of it was, equipment finance. There was loans, there was debts, there was electricity bills and payment plans and lots of stuff. But to answer your question, I was fortunate enough to sell the business to another guy in town who already had another hospitality business, and he would come in every day for lunch.
Okay. So he didn't know what was going on behind the scenes?
Well, and he didn't, but I was honest and said, listen, you're getting this fantastic fit out that costed us over $400,000. And I will sell it to you for the cost of the equipment finance, and our ATO debt.
Basically, just to get yourself out of debt.
So we didn't make any money. We paid all the staff their entitlements. We paid all the super. We paid the landlord, the electricity, and gave the bank their $90,000
and walked away.
And
you know what, mate? I reckon that's a pretty positive outcome.
Yeah, and it's funny, Jobbers, because probably 12 years ago, I did a public speaking course, and the facilitator, Trev Bell, who
yes, I do.
And he said, everyone's got to get up in front of the room and pull at the heartstrings and tell us a story about yourself. If you want to be a good public speaker, you've got to make the audience cry. So one after the other, someone got up there and told their stories, and there's some horrible stories about domestic violence and attempted suicide, and Warren Davies, who's actually, to his credit, made a great career since that, the unbreakable farmer. And and he got up there. And then I was sitting in the audience thinking, what am I going to say? Like I've had, as I mentioned before, a pretty sheltered lifestyle in the Mornington
Yep.
Peninsula, private boys' school. But now I've got a story, and the story's in the book. But
Yeah.
and I say it, and I said it at the book launch in Byron Bay. Life's tough, and for everyone, it's going to be tough at some point in time.
Yep.
It's just a matter of how you pivot, how you adapt, and how you cope with it.
Yep.
And I think that's the key thing. Like it's not all, beer and Skittles. At sometimes, you're going to have your back against the wall. And as I said, it might be 4 years, it might be a decade. Who knows? But you just got to hang in there.
And you've got to expect it. You're right. You've got to expect it. And also you've got to look at it like it's part of the journey, and that it's part of the evolution of who you are becoming and what you're going to end up doing. So it's rarely a negative thing unless it's how you look at it. And you're turning that adversity into something incredibly powerful with your book and your message and your stories and your passion and your emotion that will move people to hopefully help them live their best life. So, mate, let's have another break. Come back and I'm going to get you to read some of your favorite bits out of your book.
Oh, look out.
We'll be back.
Right. It's been awesome chatting on the Wellness Puzzle podcast about Blokes Inc. and my journey from health to hospo and back to health. So remember, if you're struggling or know someone else who is struggling, why not grab yourself a copy of Blokes Inc. Play a Bigger Game, as it is a great resource for a healthier and happier life. Or alternatively, let's chat in person. Andrew will share my details in the show notes. Anyway, back to the Wellness Puzzle podcast. Enjoy.
Thank you for sharing everything you've shared and for getting, going into the dark places. Because often we try to avoid them. We don't want to talk about them. We think, no, they were failures, but they weren't failures. I mean, you had a crack. How do we ever know if you don't have a go? That's I've always said that. I'd rather try something and fail it than regret not ever having tried.
And 100% agree with that. And I'm reflecting to the Byron launch because it's still pretty raw. But a lot of people said it was good that you were so authentic and so vulnerable, and spoke about the heartache and what you went through emotionally with the family and the finance. And a lot of people hide that. And a good mate of mine, and it's not his quote, but he came up and saw me when I was going through this horrible time. And he goes, Tory, a problem shared is a problem halved.
It's true.
Goes, tell me what's going on. And I was never brave enough because I felt I didn't add value. I couldn't, how you going? Well, I'm going shit jobbers. Like, I've got no money. My wife is disengaged. The kids aren't happy. And I couldn't find a way out.
You didn't think there was value in you, but actually that's where the value is.
Yeah,
and that's
100%.
interesting. That's hard for men to actually recognize that their value and strength is in that vulnerability, in those failures, or in those times where they're struggling. That's where the strength actually is. Yeah. So for men listening, that vulnerability, what you're hearing from Tory right now is absolute vulnerability, and it's a power and a strength. Yeah. And because your ability to talk about it gets it out of you, gets it
100%.
And it's if you keep it in, if you stuff it in, if you hide it and pretend it's not there, it's a ticking time bomb, and it's going to leave a mess.
And I do think jobbers on that, it's got to be verbalized.
Yes.
Rather than written or text or whatever. I think you've got to verbalize. And ideally, if you've got someone at the other end who's a good listener, then it goes a long way in sort of helping you overcome it. And I think it is that honesty, integrity, and, being vulnerable.
Agreed, mate. Agreed. Okay. So I know you've got a book holding in your hands. It's got all sorts of markers in it and bookmarks in it. You've obviously done a bit of reading. So Tory, you did a launch in Byron Bay a couple of weeks ago. There's a launch in Melbourne, and as you're listening to this, and hopefully it's before the launch, it's May 15, 2025 in Melbourne. And so people can find out, we'll tell them where they can find out how to get to the launch if they'd like to. Mate, why don't you read a couple of bits out of Blokes Inc., some of your favourite bits, and some of the things that you think might help the listeners?
Well, it's been interesting, and I guess through you, jobbers, and you were, let's be honest, and you mentioned in the forward, you were my accountability coach, and obviously the way it looks and reads, and then a lot of the structure is to do with the feedback through yourself and also Justine, the publisher. So there are some quotes in there, and I tried to have a lot of my own quotes, and then there's sort of some key themes and sentences, and the book's 12 chapters long. It's an easy read.
Yeah.
And I say to people, I said, if you're struggling with nutrition, just start with that chapter.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who I am, you might read the first
First
chapter and
chapter.
understand, and then go to nutrition, and do it and do the homework
Yeah.
and go through what you need to do, how you're going to do it, and by when.
And that's what I love
Um,
about the book, mate, because you've got at the end of each chapter, you've got all these strategies and suggestions and action steps for people, and you've got your perfect threesome. That's in each chapter, isn't
yes.
it? So
Well,
you've got it in the book. It just wasn't the
yeah,
title of the book.
yeah, correct. And I still, I'm a key advocate for that title for blokes, because I think they can resonate with and then not forget about it. And
Absolutely.
I think one of the chapters that's probably read the most by the books or left open next to their bed is the sex chapter. And for
Of course, mate. Of course.
one reason or another, it's chapter 10. It's the shortest chapter, but
The most read chapter.
the most read chapter. And again, it's like anything. It comes down to communication and bio-individuality, and what's right for you is going to be
Yep.
different for me or my partner and my wife.
Yep.
But there is the last sentence of this chapter is, people say, what's sex like? And for me, I say, for me, sex is like a packet of party mix. It's always good. Occasionally crave it more than others, and it's hard to stop once you start. There is a sudden high before adrenal exhaustion, and if you choose, you can share it with others. And I think for those people that know me well, I've got a sweet tooth, and I could smash a packet of Allen's Party Mix, by the time I filled up the car and I'm driving back on the highway. So I am guilty tipping the mix along,
Tipping
the
the
freeway.
sugar mix
Yeah,
over the balance point.
yeah.
Yep.
So that was my reflection. But
I love it, mate.
if I was to look at the health of it and,
Yep.
and my target audience, it's probably Steve Jobs, who incredibly smart guy,
Yep.
but was taken way too early of pancreatic cancer.
Yep.
And I talk in there, and it's in the words of Steve Jobs, and he goes, "I reached the pinnacle of success in the business world. However, aside from work, I have little joy. Lying on my sickbed and recalling my whole life, I realized that all the recognition and wealth that I took so much pride in has paled and become meaningless in the face of impending death. Material things lost can be found, but one thing that can never be found when lost is life."
Yeah. Wow.
And I think blokes, they
Yep.
take their health for granted.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
always,
She'll be
I'll
right,
do it
mate.
next week, or I'll do it after a trip, or I've got a conference, or I've got to go to the States, or I've got to do this, or
Yep.
I want to pay the mortgage off, or I'll get the kids through private school. But like he was 62,
Yeah.
um, and he just didn't, he dedicated all his time being one dimensional, and that's another chapter in the book. Like, we've got to become multidimensional,
Yeah.
and that is social connectivity, it's exercise, it's sleep, it's nutrition, it's all that. At the same time, living your life. Like, I'm not telling people not to have a beer or a glass of red, but it's everything in moderation, everything in balance.
Yeah.
And I think with, unfortunately, social media, we look at things and you aspire to be like that or look like that or do that, and it's unrealistic.
It is.
And a lot of the people that are doing that, were like me, that they're actually not practicing what they preach.
And they're missing out on the important stuff in life.
Yeah,
Thinking, competing and comparing and trying to keep up with the Joneses and trying to keep up with the people on social media and have more money and drive a nicer car and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, lying on your deathbed, just like Steve Jobs did, you're going to
Yeah.
regret the important
100%.
things if you don't prioritize them right now. And that's your health and well-being, and that's your relationships, that's
Yeah.
social connectivity, and that your self-worth. I mean, we are the most important person, and all the money in the bank is not going to make you feel better about yourself.
100%, 100%. And I guess for me, in terms of the structure of the book, mindset, apart from chapter 1, which is a bit about me, the second chapter is mindset.
Yep.
Like, we've got to get that right, and
Well, that's the key, isn't it? With it, you don't make
100%.
any choice or do anything that you don't first think about. So let's get
Yeah.
the mindset piece right.
And everyone that's reading this book, are educated human beings.
Yeah.
But our industry jobbers, and that's probably what drove us out of it. There's so many fads and fly-by-nighters that come in
Yep.
and try and monetize it.
Yep.
And it's at the detriment to good trainers or good people, and we're the ones that suffer.
Yeah, they certainly highlight the wrong things like six pack and buns of steel and
Yeah.
your weight and all
Yeah,
sorts of stuff
they
that's
end up
really
with
not that important.
sleeping disorders and eating disorders, and this whole Ozempic, craze that's going to hit the market over the next, 12 to 24 months. It's going to be frightening because people
Well,
like shortcuts. They like the quick fix.
yep, they do. So your book's obviously about getting out of that quick fix mindset and starting to build habits and create routines and structure in your life that you can sustain for the rest of your life and will continue to benefit you forever. It's ridiculous, isn't it? We go on these diets, quick fix to lose some weight, then put it all back on. It's harder to get rid of, and we roller coaster for most of our lives, and it beats us around, from a self-esteem and self-image point of view. But
Yeah.
all you got to do is slow down a little bit. As you said, just one little step at a time, build some structure, build some habits, create the right thinking. And before you know it, you're where you want to be and you'll stay there forever.
And that's the key, jobbers. And to close the podcast, I'll sort of come back to the title of the book, Blokes Inc. And it's sort of, we need to understand our personal biometrics, and most of the corporate execs would understand or know their credit card debt, they'll know their mortgage repayment, but they'd have no idea what their blood pressure is, what their calcium score is, what their testosterone levels are. And it's getting clarity around that, and again, play a bigger game. It's, that invitation to take ownership of your health, because we know that when we feel better, we show up better. And that's what I'm passionate about, is how do I make jobbers feel better? So tomorrow
Absolutely.
he shows up better with his relationship, with his work, and with his purpose.
Awesome.
And if we can get that, more often than not, yes, you're going to have shit days. Everyone's going to have shit days, but let's not stay in that, that mindset. How are we going to get out of it, and how are you going to be the hero of your own story?
Love that, mate. Love it. Okay, so there's a couple of things we just need to chat about before we end this, and you've got a launch. Now, again, if people are listening to this and it's before May 15, 2025, and you're in Melbourne,
Yeah.
what are the details for your launch, Tory?
Yeah, the details for the launch at 6 till 8 p.m, May the 15th, at a place in Toorak called the Commons. They can get the detail. There's a QR code on Facebook, Tory Trewhitt, or Instagram, Tory Trewhitt. But yeah, they just need to RSVP on the QR code or turn up to the Commons in Toorak on Toorak Road, or 6 to 8 p.m. on the 15th. And Jobbers will be the MC. So
Yes, I will be.
I look forward to that. And hopefully we get a good crew, good turnout.
I'm sure we will. And mate, for people that can't get to the launch, or it's after the launch date, or they're not in Melbourne, how do they buy your book?
Yeah, we're going through that phase now, working with a few book distributors. But you can already get it on Amazon. So I can share the Amazon link if you want.
And they'll be able to get it from your website.
And also get it.
What is your website?
Tory Trewhitt, TORYWHITT.com.au, and they can certainly buy it there. And for those that are coming, there's going to be book sales there, and there's already people that have sort of pre-purchased the book. So if they use the QR code, it's a little bit cheaper. It's $25 pre-book launch, or $29.97.
Okay, well there you go. There's an incentive to get it now. Anyway,
Yes.
mate, thank you so much for sharing. It's been an awesome conversation, and I'm looking forward to the book launch. I'm looking forward to seeing the great things you do, because I know this is just book number one of many, many to come.
Yeah, I appreciate Jobbers, and in all honesty, to your audience, you've been a key component and certainly kept me accountable. I know you don't like to pump up your own tires, but
No, mate, you pump as much as you like.
I think the accountability coaching, and the MC in Byron Bay asked about that. He goes, "Oh, did you feel strange having a coach yourself?" And I said, in all honesty, I think everyone needs a coach.
Absolutely.
And for you, I was lucky enough, and as I said, our journeys have been similar. Clearly, you're a better footballer than me, and you've written a few more books. But as I said, I thank you for assisting me in this book, Jobbers, and let's continue the journey.
Awesome, mate. Thanks, TT.
Appreciate it.
I love chatting to that guy. He's real, he's raw, he's vulnerable, he's passionate. He's been through some stuff over the last few years, and he's now using it to help other people. So as I said to him during that chat, his book now is way different than it would have been if he'd written it before his Byron Bay experience and what he's been through. But now he's got so much more perspective and vulnerability and understanding and empathy for every single human being. So I really want to encourage you to get your hands on his book. It's called Blokes Inc. And he mentioned you can get it through his website, torytrewhitt.com.au, or through Amazon. If you're listening to this and you are in Melbourne and it is before May 15, 2025, I want to encourage you to get to his book launch. The details will be on a QR code on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. So please follow it up. And if you need more information, you can contact me. Thanks for being with me this week. Another incredible conversation with an exceptional human being. Please share it. Please join me again next week because I'll be back. My name's Andrew Jobling. This is the Wellness Puzzle Podcast.